It's your boy, Ed the Dread, and you are tuned in to the Ed the Dread podcast. Yes, sir. Bam, 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 bam. Welcome back to a Money Mouth Monday. Oh, yeah. On this Monday, we will be touching base on things that are happening in Palestine, Maui for Palestine, and the activism going on here and what we've previously and or been doing right now. And also, Presidential Candidate Jill Stein and Butch Ware, and a little bit about their talk on the Breakfast Club. So, first and foremost, if you live on a rock like me or under a rock, you may not know that there's a freaking war going on in Palestine. As of right now, there's been about 186,000 Palestinians killed, 1.9 million Palestinians displaced, 95,125 Palestinians injured, and roughly 500,000 or like 400,000 buildings either demolished or I don't even know how you would say it. I mean, it's just ravaged. Per every hour, there's roughly 15 people killed, 6 of which are children, 35 people injured, 42 bombs dropped. 42 bombs dropped every hour, and then about 12 buildings demolished and or broken a little bit. So that is the severity of what's going on over there. And like I said, the Maui for Palestine activism group has been putting together pamphlets of information, has been putting together events on Maui, and more recently we just watched the Gaza Surf Club film, which I believe came out in 2016, but due to the, the events going on right now, we had good cause to watch it as a group and, plan new action and spread information about current action. So, a few things to talk about as a surfer and or surf coach who just watched the Gaza Surf Club film. First and foremost, although there's water there, you don't even realize that there might be surfing, right? I grew up on the East Coast where waves aren't that big, and it takes a lot. It takes a hurricane to produce waves that you would want to actually surf. So in my mind, thinking about the zone where that is, it's like, how does swell even fit in there, right? But also, I mean, it's a place of conflict. So a lot of times when people are in a high conflict zone and or just in a stressful scenario in their lives, their free time isn't really spent doing recreational activities like surfing, right? So thinking about surfing over there, I honestly didn't even put those two things together. And then when you watch the video, bro, they actually got waves. So, I mean, it's not like it's pumping every day, but there was definitely for sure overhead waves. And these cats, were doing their best to ride them. So with that said, there was a lot of different things that came from that video, which I didn't realize. First and foremost, there was footage of just going around Gaza. And this was in like it was released in 2016. So I'd say that it was probably shot, a year or two beforehand. And the place was blown to bits already. Like, out here, we're jumping off a reef over Honolulu Bay. You're like going on the rock and jumping off, right? Or you go out to like the jetty at Kahului Harbor and you walk on the rocks and you jump off. Out there, they're walking over broken down rubble with rebar sticking out and jumping off into the water. It's like completely insane. If that's what they're jumping off to surf, I can only imagine what's under the water. Say you take a wipeout, like a lot of times you don't want to hit the reef here, or if it's a heavy day, you might get pinned down on the bottom. Imagine if you got pinned with rebar jabbed through you. You'd be like what? I mean, and that's the reality of their scenario. So, again, I didn't even think that there would be waves there, but also, the terrain is just ridiculous, right? Personally, I was thinking, looking at the waves there, that it's actually a place they could skim. There's for sure skim. One of the problems that they have is that getting the actual equipment there is very difficult, right? They don't have access to foam. It's tough to get supplies to build surfboards. And then even when, this sponsor guy from Hawaii was sending them boards, they were hung up in Israel for 2 years before they could get there. 2 years, bro. Could you imagine? Like, I get mad if I order something and it takes like 3 weeks because I know they put it on a boat as opposed to like sending it through the air here. I'm like, yo, 3 weeks, bro. Where's my shit? I know it's on a boat, but I'm mad at you anyway. Could you imagine 2 years waiting for your surfboard? You're like, yo, I bought this thing, I ordered it, they made it, the shaper made it, sent it to me, and it's been fucking 2 years. That would be completely insane, right? But that's the reality of it there. I mean, you could see that when the homie got the visa and went to Hawaii to learn to shape and do stuff, like, it was going through fucking, like the biggest barricade. It's like getting out of jail. You have to like break out of this freaking bar, and there's a guy there behind a glass, and there's another person checking you out, and it's like, it took him 6 times, I believe, this brother Ibrahim. It took him 6 times tries to get a visa, and they kept denying it every time. And even if he paid a bunch of money, went to Egypt, they deny it. So it's like the reality of getting board supplies and or just getting people out of there to learn the craft of shaping and or surfing is very, very difficult. One thing that really struck me and honestly kind of like made me upset was the fact that they had a lot of girl surfers up until like 14, because at about 15, when you turn into a woman, you've got to put the hijab on and you're looking for a husband and you just can't surf. And that was completely fine with every male in that video. They were just like, oh yeah, girls used to surf, but and then they get a husband and it's like, they can't. We're cool with that, right? And everybody's just like, yeah, right. We're cool. Don't matter to me. Fuck it. Shorty can't surf. And you see the pain that this young woman goes through, like literally going from being on the beach every day and being in the ocean and surfing to not even be allowed in the ocean and barely on the beach, like just fully covered. And it wasn't like she was turning into an Americanized or a westernized woman trying to surf. She wasn't like, oh, I'm putting on a bikini. Like, she was fully clothed, like full long sleeve, full, and in the ocean had a hat on covering her head, and it's still like, nah. And then the one time that her dad does sneak her out there when she's a little bit older, even when she gets out of the water, takes her hat off, and then wet hair, soaking wet, immediately puts a hijab on. So it's not like they're denying women who are trying to be like Western women and wear nothing and do all this. Like, no, they're just denying a woman who like just loves to surf and is still living within like all the Muslim standards, right? So with that said, I mean, it was difficult to watch at times, being that you see the restrictions that these people have on what they can do. But also it kind of gave you hope. And it actually, now thinking about it, it's like there was a guy on the beach who like had a little shack where he kept boards and everything, and fuck, it's 2024 now, that shit might have been blown up. But at that moment, it's like you could see the hope that people had to surf. You could see that like they're giving everything they had to keep these boards in order and to get people in the ocean, and it was pretty beautiful. Now, with that said, the last podcast that I did was a review of the debate. Right now, there was a number of presidential candidates not allowed in any debates because I believe they hold some standard of like you have to have 12 to 15% of the electoral college votes, or the popular vote, which is crazy. One, because Ross Perot was told that to get federal funding for the Green Party back in like, I don't know, the 90s. And I think that his first and or second time running, he did end up getting 15 or more % of the popular vote, and they still didn't get federal funding for their party. So imagine that, right? It's the system that we're played. But what I would like to bring to light is, again, the fact that neither Trump nor Harris is going to stop the genocide in Israel or in Palestine committed by Israel, right? They got Netanyahu over shaking hands and fucking giving him applause and shit. And this guy is wanted by the International Court of Justice as like a war criminal right now. We literally sent our representative, and it was the only person to fucking veto a ceasefire numerous times, right? So when we talk about presidential candidates and you talk about, the state of events in the world, you can't leave out things like the genocide in Palestine, right? And again, if you are talking about the Republicans or the Democrats, both of them take loads of money from Israel. And I believe it's called the IPAC, AIPAC, right? So regardless which side you think you're on with voting in America, they're both only on one side when it comes to getting funding, who they're looking out for, and their financing, right? And Trump said, "Yo, if Harris became president, Israel wouldn't exist," and he wants Israel strong as fuck. If Harris got elected, she said, "We want a two-state solution, but Israel always has the right to defend itself, and we will always support them," right? So there's nothing swaying those fools' opinion. But there is one candidate who was just recently put on the Breakfast Club, which kind of tough to watch, not because of the actual candidates and their platform and ideas, but because of the fools that Charlemagne and them brought on the damn show. Some chick named Angela, worst person to ever bring. This chick already had an agenda. You could see it in her screw ass face every time they said something. And then I think my favorite part was when she actually just shut her fucking laptop at the end and shut the fuck up. But it took her an hour just to shut the fuck up, right? So one thing about Jill Stein and Butch Ware, is that first and foremost, Jill Stein is a non-Zionist Jewish lady, right? Butch Ware is a black Muslim dude. So let's just put that out there. I mean, it ain't your regular, hey, praying to Jesus bullshit ass, separation of church and state people. Right. With that said, Jill's agenda happens to be complete opposite of many. And three things that stand out to me, boom, glaring like a fucking floodlight right in your grill, is first and foremost stopping the genocide. Right? We act like the U.S. isn't the biggest power on the planet or whatever, right? We spend the most military budget. We outdo all the fucking 10 nations after us with our military budget and all theirs combined. So we got the power to just stop the shit. I mean, it's just that simple, right? The second thing that really stood out to me is that they believe in reparations. Okay, there's been studies about how much reparations would cost, how it could trickle down to society. I mean, I believe it's somewhere around 2 trillion or something, 3 trillion, but that's the same that we spend on the national defense. That's the same that our national fucking debt is already. So how does it make any difference when they're just printing money and none of it's even real? Right? Those two things right there, stopping the genocide and helping reparations, or giving an effort to get reparations, which our nation said was going to give African Americans and never did, ever. Right? But also banishing the Electoral College, which is also kind of a hangover from slavery. Right? Once slaves are freed, or they're trying to vote on who's going to be the president, they need to figure out how they're going to do this. And just to let you know, the first number of presidents were slave-owning motherfuckers. I think it was the first 32 years of the country, the presidential person running the place owned slaves. Right? So that's a nightmare, just to let you know. So when you think the country is fucking doing good, just remember that the people that wrote this declaration were owning other people. Right? But when they allowed slaves to be 3/5 of a human, now they got to figure out what the fuck's going on, right? In the South, if you have 200,000 slaves you're owning in a state, and each of them is 3/5 a person, you're getting about 125,000 votes out of them. Now, you don't want them black people to vote, because they're not going to vote with you, the slave owner guy, even though they're uneducated and shit. So what's the best way to do it, right? Take the number of people you got and take a number of fucking electors that know what they're talking about and voting about, and let them fuckers do the vote, right? That way, the homie from the South who owns all the slaves still gets his vote in the actual grand scheme of things toward the president, and the people who are slaves and and or freed and or now are 3/5 of a human get to feel like, I did have a say because 3/5 of me got to be part of this electoral bullshit. Right? So I would suggest that if you plan on voting, and usually I burn my ballot, but after watching The Breakfast Club, I might not. I might actually go vote for Jill Stein and then burn my receipt and light a joint with it. Because the reason I've never gone out to vote, and this was one of the questions that they were asked, is why would anyone want to vote for you? Because they're going to take away from the votes from the Democrats. But there's so many people like me. I'm 40 and I've never gone to vote, right? 2008 or whatever, people are like, why didn't you go vote for Obama? 2012, why didn't you go vote for Obama? Because these motherfuckers ain't saying nothing that I care about. They're not actually going to fix nothing. Their ideas suck, right? But this lady's ideas are good. Now, is she going to be able to get them done? We're not sure. Would you rather have the chance of a third party and giving the nation something better than Coke and Pepsi moving forward? Yeah. I used to get high on acid and say, yo, I'm going to fucking be the president. All I need is 15% of the popular vote to make federal funding for a third party. And then I jump back and I let the party take care of it. Man, fuck that. I ain't trying to do that shit. But homegirl is. So big up to you, Jill Stein and Butch Ware. And thank you all for, just putting yourselves out there and putting yourselves into scenarios like the Breakfast Club, where you can talk to people who, may think they have an education, may have an education, may be uneducated, may reach people who have never heard about you before, right? You might get poked at by a chick named Angela, and you might just get laughed at and hugged on by a brother named Charlemagne, right? So, again, if you're a voting person and you're of voting age and you've never voted, by all means, take a look at what's going on out there, because Jill Stein ain't just sucking Israel's Johnson, especially after they just blew up a whole bunch of fucking pagers and shit in Lebanon. It's getting crazy out here. Okay, so Ed the Dread, maybe vote, maybe not vote. I don't know. We're going to find out this year. I'll probably decide after smoking a joint, and then whatever I decide, I'll light my receipt and then smoke another joint off of that. And that was your Ed the Dread podcast. Yes, sir. Woo! Please stay aware, be educated. Don't watch the internet all the time. Read books and, trust your gut instinct, because it's there for a reason. Hui ho, kako. I see you next Monday, fun day. Yeah, yes, sir.